This is the 41 Jobs Podcast with your host, VW Jobs. That's not my real name, but I need a pseudonym in case stuff gets wild and crazy and I get in trouble. I don't really want to lose my job. But I don't think that'll happen. But I'm hoping this podcast brings people entertainment and make you laugh a little bit. So one reason I started a podcast is because I started listening to podcasts about 2 years ago, working a job in the summer where I drove a bunch and had plenty of time to listen to music. So I needed to have something to do, so I started listening to these podcasts, and I loved them. And I think these are awesome. They're so interesting. No commercials. There's basically no, editing of stuff people really want to say. They don't have no bleep button, so you got to hear the real people and what they really wanted to say, and nothing really censored or anything, so it's pretty cool. So I started listening to Bill Burr and Off the Air podcast, hosted by Chick McGee, and, influenced by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan Experience is a pretty good podcast, so I'm just doing podcasts for people that about my age. Anybody wants to listen to it, but mainly people that I'm friends with. Hopefully I can make some people laugh and interview people with different experiences in their life and talk about things that have happened in the past between me and these people, or between them and people they've dealt with in their life and the careers they have and the interesting things that they've done in their careers. And I've really had probably more than 41 jobs, maybe 43, 44, whatever. Keep rising. But I always tell people I've had 41 jobs, but I've had lots of experience. And I've had, went to college and worked in TV and radio for about 6 years and went back to school to be a teacher. And I've been teaching for the last 14 years and coaching sports. And, I guess I'm not really a teacher. I'm more of an entertainer. I just try to make the kids laugh, try to get them to do what I want them to do. And I just really need an outlet to talk about things that I need to talk about with adult conversation to just interest other people. And if it doesn't interest you, like I said, turn it off. It's free. And, if I make something out of this, that's great. If I don't, it's no big deal. So I just thought it'd be a great idea for something I could do about once a week. And, I'm not sure where it's going to go. I kind of want it to be kind of like a radio show. I might do some live things. I might just talk to people that I know that have some interesting insight on things. So that's where I'm going with this, actually. So I'm hoping that, it can entertain the public. I'm actually using this site called Spreaker.com, and it's, it took me 2 years to start this. I was like 2 years ago, I said, I really want to start a podcast because I was listening to Bill Burr and people on the radio, and I was like thinking, I miss being on the radio so bad. And when I was on the radio, I couldn't really do anything because the guy that ran the radio station was kind of a dork, in my opinion. And, that's kind of strong, but I kept giving him tapes of voices and things that I could do that was funny, and he just ignored them. And, I had to say I hadn't paid my dues, but for 6 years I worked part-time at that radio station, and just, it was a good experience, but it's not really what I wanted to do. And I just got desperate and, went back to school and to be a teacher. And I'm thinking, I got to do something else because $5 an hour isn't going to make it. I loved it. It was fun, and I just didn't branch out. And I was in my 20s and getting kind of nervous about trying to get some gainful employment so I could have a family and, have enough money to have a home and have a decent car and have a wife and kids. And at that rate, I don't think I'd ever would have done it if I didn't get out of that radio station. But, I probably should have went to bigger markets or bigger cities, but I really didn't want to. I didn't really go to big cities, but, I wanted to stay in rural Indiana and, have weekends off. But, so I did that for a long time, and I just really want to get back in radio. I love sports. I love talking about crazy, controversial conspiracy theories, and I've got weird political views, and I like to hear views of other people, and I like to learn. I like to be educated. I may not be an expert at all these things I'm talking about, but hopefully I can learn something, and, hopefully you can too. So basically, I did a live podcast last weekend, and I had about 5 or 6 of my friends get on the internet real quick. It was a whole impromptu, and I took calls, and I just talked about regular stuff to people, and it was great. I just wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. So I'm not sure if I want to tape these or do them live, but I'm going to try to do them. I'm going to try to tape them, make them sound a little better. My first podcast, which is right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm doing it and the jobs that I've had and the experiences I've had and what I want to do with it. And also we're going to talk about our first topic. And that's not saying we're going to talk about this every time, but we got a good conspiracy theorist, a good friend of mine who's going to talk about, how there's like this geoengineering stuff they're doing to combat all the global warming we've got. So there's these people, these scientists and other people that think that the government or scientists are trying to change our climate to stop global warming. But in reality, these are what these people think, that the global warming, trying to stop it, is putting like chemicals in the air and making the UV radiation worse and making the ozone bigger when they were trying to protect us from this. And it's causing some kind of drought in California where it's going to cause catastrophic climate change, which, I don't know. That's a little bit extreme, but we're going to talk to my buddy about it, and he's got some good theories on it, and we're just going to banter about that topic. So hopefully later on in this episode, we're going to give AJ a call, a good friend of mine, and we're going to talk about it, and hopefully you'll get entertained by all the conspiracy theories out there. But like, I was researching this, and I was reading stuff about it, geoengineering, and there was all kinds of stuff in there where this guy said he's off the grid, and he lives in California. I think his name is Dane Wigington, I think his name is, and he used to be a scientist that worked for energy companies, and he's off the grid because he's scared that we're not going to have any power eventually, and we're going to be shut down with all our goods and services or whatever. He lives out in the middle of California, rural areas, or in a woods in California, and he says can't get proper solar energy because they're all the chemicals in the air and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting, but then I kept looking on the side, and there are all these YouTube videos, and there's this one guy that thinks all the Jews and the Israeli, the Israeli plights all a big hoax, and they're just, it's just a bunch of bunk on how they're trying to, they're the Holy Land for the Jewish people or whatever, and the homeland, and I don't know. It was really strange. And if you look on the internet, you can find anything, and there's crazy conspiracies. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. I mean, and I guess some of that could be true, but I don't watch news because it's so depressing. I can't stand watching the news, and I should be more aware of what's going on. And, it's so depressing. I about can't take it. And then you see all these conspiracies, and it makes it even worse. How they say the government's poisoning the food and all this stuff. And then there's Illuminati controlling the world and all that stuff. And, I don't know. I just hope, if there is, I hope I don't know about it. I hope I don't live to see it, because I sure don't want to see it. But, not to get too serious, but some of that stuff's pretty whacked out. Like, I've got this aunt that I'm going to call her too, and she'll just blow your mind, but she thinks the government's, poisoning people with medicine and food. And bottom line is, I think, and I'll talk to her sometime, hopefully I can get her on here. Bottom line, I think when you're out to make money and you're mass producing food and you're mass farming and all that stuff, you're bound to cut corners, figure out synthetic ways to make things easier to produce and cheaper to produce. You're going to make stuff that's probably not natural. Like the sweeteners and, mass producing food to make, the wheat kernel go longer, or crossbreeding these plants to make it yield more for farming and stuff so more people can eat, so it's cheaper, because supply and demand, if there's a lot of supply, it's going to be cheaper. So like McDonald's food mass produces all these restaurants all over the United States, and food's cheaper, so people eat there, and then people claim that it's bad for you, and then you get sick because, well, they cut corners to make the food go farther. Like if you go buy a steak at a fancy restaurant, it costs $20 or $30 or whatever a plate, and it's really good. But then you go to McDonald's, you got a dollar hamburger. Well, where does that meat come from? I got all these people say it's not real meat, soy burgers, or made out of whatever. It's made out of stuff they create, whatever. I don't know. I've even heard that chicken nuggets are made out of possum meat. Like McDonald's, it's a claim that they own 70% of, I may be wrong about the percentage, but 70% of all the possum farms in the United States. That's kind of hard to believe, but I don't know. It doesn't look like chicken to me, but it tastes good. I don't know. You just can't eat too much of anything or you can't do too much of anything. You're going to get yourself in trouble. And all you got to do is just try to live your life the best you can, and don't smoke too much, don't drink too much, don't eat too much of bad stuff, and just, if you die and the air's poison, I guess that's our fault in the beginning. I think God intended for everybody to hunt and gather and, just live on basic substance that they have, sustenance, whatever. I don't know if I got that right, but basically live on the land. But then, we started growing crops and having more kids, and kids needed a place to work, and they needed to eat more, so the crops got bigger, and then people started making towns, and people started selling grain and selling food and raising crops and raising hogs and cows and just making these big old farms bigger and selling to more people, and then these towns start springing up, and then people had to have livery stables, so they got to have horses for these farmers and these cowboys or ranchers or whatever, and then it just starts spreading out. You got to have a post office, and everything just blew up from there. And then you got to have industry, so you can build these cars and wheels, and it just blew up. Last thousands of years, everything just exponentially multiplied to the point of, eventually all this stuff's gonna backfire on us if we don't, that's just my basic general, advice is, we do too much, it's gonna hurt us. Like, if the world consumes too much, we're not going to have much left. If the world has too many kids, has too much of a population, there's not going to be enough mouths to feed, and there's not going to be enough resources. Just simple. If you eat too much, you're going to get too big, and then you're going to run out of food. So it's just basic. It's, to the individual, to the world, it's just too much of anything. But I'll be talking about a lot of conspiracy theories, but not every show. I mean, I want to entertain you and make you laugh and stuff because, I'm trying to be funny, and I like to use my voice and talk, and so basically that's what the show is going to be about. Not every time we're going to talk about sports. I want to interview people. I've got a good friend who's the acting coroner in my area, and I'm hoping I can get him on. He can give some insight on some neat stuff that he's seen as a coroner. I coached with him last 3 or 4 years, and he told me a lot of cool stories about things that I'm not sure he can talk about, but dead bodies and stuff that he's seen. It's been real interesting. He's also a cop, so he's seen a lot of good stuff. And I've got lots of friends that had several different kinds of jobs. I've got a friend that's been in law enforcement and, narcotics. He's been on narcotics groups to, drug enforcement, squads and stuff like that. So he's got a lot of cool stories. And I've got lots of friends that, I graduated with from college and high school that had really neat job experiences. And I've had a lot of vast experiences with jobs. I've worked from farms and teaching and TV and radio, and just 1 year I had 7 W-2s. So I've done a lot of weird stuff, mowed cemeteries, worked in warehouses. I've done so much crap, it's ridiculous. And it's just, it gives you a good wide range of experiences when you're talking to people that I've worked with all different types of people, blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, all kinds of stuff. So, I hope I give you some insight and entertain you with my stories and the stories I have with other people. So, hope you enjoy it, and hope you keep listening and let people know about this and all the people that I will invite. It's, off of Facebook and Spreaker.com, and on Facebook, it's VW Jobs. It's VDUBIU space Jobs. So first name VW and last name Jobs. So on Facebook, you can get the link for this. It's Spreaker.com. And the actual podcast software that I use is Spreaker.com. I heard it on a radio station I was listening to, and it was kind of weird because that day I was like thinking, I got to do this. I got the equipment. I need